Alberta street pastor Derek Reimer says he won't roll over and die as he continues a nearly 5-year legal fight tied to drag queen story hour protests after spending more than 100 days in jail. Meanwhile, Alberta has temporarily paused its directive to remove sexually explicit books from school libraries after controversy erupted over a list of 200 titles banned by the Edmonton Public School Board. The province has also introduced a new female sex at birth confirmation form for girls in school sports as regulations took effect this month. Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi drew criticism for refusing to take questions at a small town hall, even as attendance seriously lagged behind Premier Smith's Alberta Next events. And the government has launched its new digital wallet, beginning with mobile health cards, with Minister Nate Glubish emphasizing the system will be voluntary. All that and more on this week's Alberta Roundup. I'm your host, Isaac Lamoureux. Let's jump into that first story right away. So a Calgary street pastor tied to the protests of Drag Queen Story Hour says he's in a nearly 5-year legal battle and refuses to back down. Derek Reimer told True North that while Canadian totalitarianism has gone too far, he refuses to roll over and die, believing it's time to take a stand as children return to school. He said his legal troubles began after he protested drag events in late 2022, and he organized the protests through Exposing Darkness, a Christian movement he founded, though non-Christians were welcome to join. He said his protests were effective enough, considering Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondek went on a, quote, Twitter tirade arguing local bylaws weren't strong enough. Shortly after, he was charged with mischief and causing a disturbance for protesting a drag queen event at a student library. Reimer even appeared on Fox News after he was assaulted at the event. The street pastor maintains he was exercising charter-protected expression and assembly rights. He said the criminal harassment charge flowed from posting a 90-second conversation with a librarian, arguing that those who oppose the Pride movement will be punished. Reimer spent 2 months in jail for praying outside the courthouse before his trial, as it was allegedly determined to be an unapproved church service. He said, quote, "The charter is an illusion. I think the charter is basically up to the discretion of the presiding judge." In July 2025, Justice B.L. Shaw issued reasons in a conditional sentence proceeding, noting Reimer allegedly breached house arrest terms by preaching to a small group of people outside the Calgary courthouse for over 50 minutes on 2 dates. He is serving a 12-month conditional sentence and 24 months of probation following a December 2024 criminal harassment conviction. In September 2024, Justice A.A. Fradsham acquitted Reimer of mischief and causing a disturbance at Calgary's Seton Library, writing that his actions were inconsiderate and disrespectful, but did not cross the line into criminal acts. The judge also noted Reimer was physically ejected with sufficient force that he fell to the floor, and there was no evidence he used force himself. In July 2025, Court of King's Bench Justice Nancy Carruthers overturned that acquittal and ordered a new trial for spring 2026. Reimer said the justice system is inconsistent, pointing to different outcomes from different judges based on politics. He said, quote, "The lines are being blurred of what is a crime and what isn't based on your political views." He cited that one senior judge found him not guilty, while another, what he called a left-wing liberal judge, found him guilty of criminal harassment for what Reimer deemed peacefully and respectfully talking to a library manager. He also described strict conditions of house arrest that he's under. He said, quote, "It's been very taxing and difficult on me as a sole provider to provide for my wife and my child because my wife's on maternity leave." He shared probation officer documentation with goals including, quote, "Subject struggles with seeing other viewpoints, working with him in terms of breaking down traditional thoughts pertaining to the LGBTQ2S+ community." Reimer said he plans to continue street preaching and possibly even protesting events, adding that his ministry has long included feeding the homeless in downtown Calgary. He said right-leaning outlets have supported him, while left-wing media has tried to demonize him, smear him, defame him, and even slander him. He also told True North that he considered suing CBC for defamation, but he had enough on his plate with these continuous charges that he had to defend, so he decided not to. But he did say his case isn't the only one where there's been clear discrimination, favoritism, or double standards. He said, quote, "People can come in and burn our flags and chant death to Canada and nothing comes of that. But people come in and say, hey, I disagree with Drag Queen Story Hour, then they go to jail. I've spent 105 days in jail. And for what? because I'm not okay with the sexual perversion of our children, and I'm going to peacefully protest. But for our next story, we'll hop into the provincial book ordeal that has been going back and forth. The province has paused the directive that would have required K-12 school libraries to remove books with explicit sexual content by October 1st. Education Minister Dimitrios Nicolaides told True North that the pause was triggered by the Edmonton Public School Board's list of more than 200 books it planned to pull from schools, which he said that the province had no part in. He said, quote, "After becoming aware of a list of over 200 books that Edmonton Public Schools intended to remove off their shelves, I will be revising the order immediately to ensure that our classic literary works remain in school libraries, while books with graphic pornographic images, such as those depicted below, do not end up in the hands of children." He told school boards to pause the directive on Tuesday, with the email he sent to them being shared by the Canadian press. The email reads, quote, "Until further notice, please pause all implementation efforts outlined in Ministerial Order 30/2025, including removing materials containing depictions of explicit sexual content from school libraries. At this time, I ask that the school authorities also pause the development and distribution of lists of school library materials." The order, signed in July, had directed all K-12 libraries to remove materials containing a, quote, "detailed and clear depiction of a sexual act" by October 1st, and to adopt policies by January 1st. Students in grade 10 and above could still access non-explicit sexual content if age appropriate. Premier Danielle Smith repeatedly defended the policy, saying it responded to parental concerns. She said, quote, "I won't apologize for protecting Alberta's children from images they shouldn't see at school. Full stop." And the images of those books are quite damning. I'm unsurprisingly unable to show them on this video. And Smith also criticized the Edmonton Public School Board for what she called vicious compliance. She said, quote, "If they need us to hold their hand through the process, we will more than happily work with them to work through their list one by one. We are trying to take sexually explicit content out of elementary schools." She clarified how that assistance would come on Tuesday. Her directions read, quote, 1. Get graphic pornographic images out of school libraries. 2. Leave the classics on the shelves. 3. We all know the difference between the items in 1 and 2. Let's not play any more games in implementing this policy for our kids. Nicolaides emphasized the intent, which was, of course, to keep pornographic content out of classrooms. He said, quote, "Children should not be exposed to content like oral sex, sex toy use, or child molestation. And that is why we created this policy. The ministerial order is clear that school libraries are not permitted to include library materials containing explicit sexual content." But controversy erupted after Edmonton Public Schools drafted a list of over 200 titles for removal, which included Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, as well as Brave New World, The Color Purple, and The Godfather. The inclusion of The Handmaid's Tale prompted Atwood to post a satirical short story on X over the weekend, accusing Smith of banning her book. Of course, users quickly corrected Atwood, noting that it was Edmonton Public School Board, not the province, that made the list. But 2 other school divisions confirmed to the Canadian press on Tuesday that they had halted work on their own compliance lists following Nicolaides' email. Our next story will include another recent legislation implemented by the province, but this one has not been paused. Just days before new legislation took effect on September 1st, a Fairness and Safety in Sport confirmation form surfaced on X, indicating that student athletes competing in female-only divisions will need to confirm they were female sex at birth. The form states, quote, "Under this legislation, athletes 12 and older wishing to participate in a female-only league, team, class," this does not include physical education class, "or division of a relevant sport, must submit a signed Fairness and Safety in Sport confirmation form prior to participation, including tryouts and practices. Parents or guardians must sign for athletes under 18, while students 18 or older may complete their own forms. But failing to submit the form means the athlete cannot compete in the female-only category." Signatories will also have to check 4 boxes. One required checkbox reads, quote, "The athlete named above is of the female sex at birth and therefore meets the eligibility criteria to participate in a female-only league, class, or division of the relevant sport." And replies to the X post actually supported the new legislation. One user said, quote, "Can't wait to hear the mental illness sympathizers melt down over this one." Another read, quote, "Finally, protecting our wives and daughters." Alberta's United Conservative government previously defended the new policy as a way to preserve fairness and protect safety in female sports. Tourism and Sport Minister Andrew Bochenko said, quote, "When Albertans participate in the sports they love, they should be able to do so on a level playing field. No athlete should should have an unfair advantage, and no athlete should have to put themselves at risk of harm to participate. The regulation requires provincial sports organizations, school authorities, and post-secondary institutions to create athlete eligibility policies, limiting female-only divisions to those who are biologically female. The new regulations will affect all school authorities under the Education Act and post-secondary institutions under the Post-Secondary Learning Act. But for our next story, we'll flip over to the NDP side of the provincial coin. Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi faced criticism after a town hall where he did not take questions from the audience. In a post shared to X by the account NDP Lie Detector, Nenshi framed the decision as an opportunity for attendees to mingle. He said, quote, "Rather than give people the opportunity to hold the mic and give us a monologue, we're giving you the opportunity to talk to your friends and neighbors, and the friends you haven't met yet in the room," alluding that Smith's town halls might operate in a lesser fashion. The Alberta Next panel held 2 town halls in July, 3 in August, and will have another 5 in September, and of course those halls are hosted by Smith and various other panelists. During those town halls, anyone is welcome to come up to the microphone, and Nenshi was getting blasted by X-users in the comments. One user mocked his small crowd size, saying, quote, "You know that saying, we're going to need a bigger boat? Not going to be used in this instance." Another user said, quote, "Most Calgarians were so ecstatic to finally rid themselves of this bloated blowhard, but here we are again, having to listen to this condescending, arrogant, lefty, woke wing nut. He's like a bad fungus that just won't go away." Founder and president of the Alberta Institute, a public policy think tank, Peter McCaffrey, also ridiculed Nenshi on X, making way for a series of new negative replies. One X user noted that it was a big attendance for Nenshi, saying that there was at least 25 attendees. Another called Nenshi a, quote, "NDP coward, just like his boss, Jagmeet Singh." While Smith's town halls have had close to 1,000 attendees live at each, with thousands more online, even the Alberta Prosperity Project town halls have outperformed Nenshi's town hall, with Edmonton's town halls for the APP seeing around 300 attendees live and over 600 viewing the event live online. For the last story, we'll cover a recent technological advancement from the Alberta government. Alberta announced a digital wallet that lets residents store and access government-issued documents on their smartphones, starting with the health card, making Alberta the first province to launch a mobile health card accessible through a digital wallet. Technology and Innovation Minister Nate Glubish outlined a phased expansion in an interview with True North, which will eventually include driver's licenses, hunting and fishing permits, marriage, birth and death certificates, land titles, diplomas, trade certificates, and other government documents to be added over time. One thing very important that Glubish wanted to emphasize is that he said this wallet will always be optional, not mandatory. And I've seen accounts online suggesting the opposite, which is just not true. Glubish said, quote, "We know that there are a lot of folks who are super excited to use some of these modern tools, but we also know that some folks, that's not their preference. They would rather have a physical card, and so for them, what I would say is this: you will never have to use this." Another thing coming forward from the Department of Health is that starting next year, a new higher quality plastic card will be implemented with Albertans' driver's licenses. Glubish added that confidentiality was of the utmost importance. The government of Alberta cannot track or monitor where the documents are used, and Glubish said this was not a bug, but it was by design. He said, quote, "Your information cannot be accessed or shared without your consent. This was foundational for me." Although this will make it easier for some people to share documents, anyone aged 14 or older can get their own mobile wallet and health cards, but those younger will have to add their cards to their parents' wallets. Spouses and interdependent family members can also add their cards to each other's wallets. The mobile card will function just as the current paper card does and will be available as valid proof of health insurance coverage throughout Alberta. It will be presentable at hospitals, clinics, and other medical settings. The wallet is accessible at alberta.ca/alberta-wallet. That wraps up this week's Alberta Roundup. My name's Isaac Lamoureux. Have a great weekend. Thank you, and God bless.